Lewis Carroll is most famous for the dream logic of Alice, but his later work, The Hunting of the Snark, feels like something quite different. It is a long, sprawling nonsense poem structured into 8 distinct sections called fits. Before the story even begins, Carroll sets a mood that is surprisingly heavy for a book of whimsy. He starts with a reflection on the transition from childhood to adulthood. He speaks of the golden summer hours of youth, where everything is simple and bright, contrasted against the seething outer strife of adult life. It is a nostalgic, almost melancholy opening that prepares us for a journey that is less about a playful adventure and more about a strange existential pursuit. The story follows a crew of specialists who have set out on a ship to find a mythical creature called the Snark. This isn't just any group of travellers, they are a collection of highly specialised, almost absurd characters, each defined by a single, rigid professional role. There is a butcher who can only kill beavers, a baker who can only bake bride cake, a barrister, a banker, and the Bellman, who acts as the leader of the expedition. They are joined by a tame beaver who lives on the ship. As the ship travels through the sea, the logic of their world begins to fray. They eventually arrive at a desolate, rocky landscape, and it is here that the group's internal dynamics start to shift in surreal ways. One of the first strange encounters involves the butcher and the beaver. Initially, the butcher's presence is a source of terror for the tame beaver, as the predator and prey are naturally at odds. However, the Bellman interrupts this tension with a lecture on the jub-jub bird, a creature so fierce it can drive a person mad. Through this bizarre academic diversion, an unlikely and permanent bond is formed between the butcher and the beaver. They become companions, moving past their natural roles through the sheer absurdity of the Bellman's lecture. As the expedition moves deeper into the unknown, the characters begin to experience the psychological toll of the hunt. The barrister has a dream that feels like a descent into a legal nightmare. In this dream, a Snark acts as a lawyer in a courtroom, turning the very concept of order and law into something nonsensical and unstable. Meanwhile, the banker suffers a much more physical and traumatic encounter. He is attacked by a bandersnatch, a creature that leaves him physically black-faced and mentally shattered. This isn't just a moment of slapstick humour, it shows that the world they are entering has real, albeit strange, consequences. The banker is left broken, a shadow of his former self, highlighting the idea that this quest is taking a toll on the crew's sanity and well-being. The tension builds as the crew wanders through the landscape, searching for a creature that is famously difficult to define. This brings us to the core of the poem's mystery, the distinction between a snark and a boojum. Throughout the journey, the characters are looking for the Snark, which is a creature that is elusive and perhaps even difficult to find, but it is essentially a goal. However, there is a much more dangerous entity known as a boojum. To encounter a boojum is not just to fail in your quest, but to face a total existential disappearance. The climax of the poem arrives when the baker, who has been somewhat clumsy and forgetful throughout the journey, suddenly finds himself standing atop a high crag. In a moment of ecstatic, sudden triumph, he spots something in the distance. He believes he has finally found it. He begins to shout the creature's name, his voice rising in excitement as he prepares to announce his success to the rest of the crew. But before he can finish the word, he vanishes. He falls into a chasm, disappearing completely from the world. The crew realizes with horror that what the baker saw was not a Snark, but a boojum. The realization is devastating. The quest has led them directly into a trap of total erasure. The baker is gone, not just dead, but effectively removed from existence. The poem ends with the crew left to grapple with this sudden, inexplicable loss and the terrifying reality of what they have been hunting. When we look back at this poem, we see more than just a collection of made-up words. Carroll is famous for his use of portmanteau language, words like frumious or slithy that blend 2 meanings together to create something entirely new. These linguistic inventions do more than just sound funny, they create a sense of a world that is constantly shifting, where the language itself is as unstable as the landscape. There is also a deep sense of the absurdity of specialization. The characters are defined by their jobs, the butcher, the baker, the banker. But as the journey progresses, these roles become increasingly useless or even ridiculous. In a world of nonsense and boojums, being a specialist in bride cake or beaver killing offers no protection and provides no real meaning. It suggests a critique of how humans try to impose rigid structures and professional identities on a universe that is fundamentally chaotic and indifferent to our categories. This leads us to the most enduring theme of the work, the pursuit of a goal that might be fatal. The distinction between the Snark and the Boojum serves as a powerful metaphor. The Snark represents the goals we chase in life, the career, the achievement, the discovery, things that are difficult to reach but ultimately part of the human experience. And the Boojum, however, represents the danger of a quest that is all-consuming. It is the pursuit that doesn't just fail, but one that consumes the person pursuing it, leaving nothing behind. It is the idea of an existential disappearance, where the pursuit of a certain kind of truth or success results in the total loss of the self. Scholars have spent over a century trying to pin down exactly what Carroll meant by these symbols. Some have suggested the poem is an allegory for the pursuit of happiness, or perhaps a commentary on the medical or legal realities of the Victorian era. However, Carroll himself was famously cagey about the meaning of his nonsense. He often suggested that the poem was simply a play on words, a linguistic exercise in joy and absurdity. Yet, even if we take Carroll at his word and treat it as pure nonsense, the emotional resonance of the ending remains. The transition from the golden summer hours of the opening to the sudden, silent disappearance of the baker creates a profound sense of unease. We start with a nostalgic look at the simplicity of childhood and end with a terrifying, complex reality of an adult world where things can vanish without explanation. The hunting of the Snark is a journey into the unknown that ultimately leads to a void. It reminds us that while the search for meaning is a fundamental human drive, there is a fine line between a meaningful quest and a destructive one. The poem leaves us standing on that rocky landscape with the rest of the crew, looking into the chasm, wondering if what we are hunting is a prize to be won or a trap waiting to claim us.